Hello, my name's Rob and I'm from Team Hope. I grew up in a family of 5 children. Well, eventually there were 6, but when I look back on my childhood, I have to say they were good days. Just about every Sunday we went for the infamous Sunday afternoon drive. All 7 of us in the early days would pile into the old Morris Oxford. 4 in the back, 3 in the front. They were the days of the old bench seat in the front. We would go off on an outing. One of our favourite places was Waterfall Gully. Now that's about 10 k's, if that, from the CBD of Adelaide, which is my hometown, capital city of the state of South Australia. Once you get into the park where Waterfall Gully is, you just think it's amazing that such a beautiful, tranquil place could be so close to the centre of a major city. One day my dad and I were just separated a little bit from the family. We're walking through the park and there's a large pool which is at the base of the waterfall. Now I must have been pretty small because I can remember holding my dad's hand. I had to reach up to hold his hand. We got down to where the pool was. It's quite a really large pool, and like any young boy I was fascinated by the water. I wandered close to the edge, intrigued by it. It was at that point that my father said something that filled my tiny little heart with terror. He said, "Keep back from the water, there's crocodiles in there." Oh, I bolted behind my father's legs, obviously seeking some protection. I suppose it gave any passing hungry crocodile a wider choice of lunch. Should one of these hideous reptiles decide to launch an attack, well, I figured my dad would be the first course. You know, I'm a great believer in stacking the odds in my favour. It was such a traumatic thing. After that day, I hated going to Waterfall Gully. And when the family did opt to go there, I would stay down in the bottom section. I was too frightened to go anywhere near that pool. And for many years, I hated going to Waterfall Gully, especially near the water. The dislike of going there was even apparent in my adult life. One day a group of friends had persuaded me that we'd go there for a drive. I reckon I was in my early 20s by that time. And I remember sitting near the pool feeling quite brave and very happy with myself that I was sitting so close to the edge of the water, though I did admit to myself I was casting a wary eye over the water's surface, seriously concerned for my safety. I was watching for a pair of those beady reptilian eyes gliding silently toward me, greedily accessing me for his lunch. And then, in a moment, a series of thoughts tumbled through my mind. Something like, I really like this place. Why don't I come here more often? It's just such a calm and beautiful place. What a pity there's crocodiles here. And straight away something astounding happened. An instantaneous revelation flashed into my mind. Are you serious? There's no crocodiles here. There never were crocodiles here. That's just my father's rogue sense of humour, trying to protect me, making sure I keep back from the water's edge. He didn't want me to drown. The moment that realisation hit me, an immediate peace came over me. I no longer considered Waterfall Gully to be a bad place. In fact, it became one of my favourite places, and it still is. And if you're ever visiting Adelaide, I'd encourage you to go and have a look. It's a beautiful place. But what I had done that day was make an adult re-evaluation to a childhood conclusion. Now, this is a process that counsellors endeavour to guide us through when we suffer from some sort of inexplicable apprehension from a childhood experience. Now, we all carry childhood experiences. That's how we learn. But sometimes they're very significant experiences and they get burned into our memory. And sometimes those experiences can cause us significant apprehension. When something really horrible happens to us, the impact gets hidden deep in our subconscious. Sometimes it can come into our conscious. A lot of times it doesn't. We feel fear or apprehension and we don't know why, and the conclusions remain hidden. Do you know what I'm talking of? Is there a place or a person or an experience that causes you some grief? Sometimes these things can cause a severe life-changing trauma. Now, one tech that I've used as a pastor when I'm sharing with people who have suffered like this, there's a deeply embedded childhood experience in the conscious or the subconscious mind, and it's a process called externalizing. The strategy seeks to encourage the client to describe the event as a spectator. And I might even shift my chair next to the person that I'm sharing with and sit alongside them, and we treat, I use point to what they're describing. What I'm doing is endeavouring to put the experience, the traumatic experience, outside of the person so that they're looking at this past event. And that may help the person consider the event more objectively because they're not caught up in the trauma of it. They are reflecting on the event as an external spectator rather than an internal victim. People who suffer significant trauma as children carry some tough baggage. Sometimes guilt, sometimes fear, anxiety, depression. Is that you? Or someone you know? Sometimes externalizing can open the door to making an adult re-evaluation to a childhood conclusion. Where sometimes I've had people who can see the injustice of what was done to them as a child through that externalizing technique. Now, I must be very clear about something here. If a past childhood event has had a highly traumatic impact on you, you'll need the help of a trained professional here. What I'm endeavouring to do in this presentation is to show you that help is possible. You may have concluded that it's beyond help, but as you've heard me talking and describing the experiences of it, I'm perhaps opening the door to you think, well, maybe something could be done. Maybe something could help me. So please, if I'm making sense to you, reach out to a qualified professional who you can relate to. Someone who comes from a value base that you can relate to, that doesn't contradict. Because there is a possibility of making these re-evaluations in our head. There are times when friends may be able to help. They can offer to help. And it's particularly if they're able to encourage you. I'm a bit wary of advice, but I'm a strong advocate of encouragement. Now, I've discovered there's one friend who can have a very deep impact on the healing process, and that friend is God. You might think, what? I never envisaged God to be a friend, but Jesus himself, God's only Son, said that we can call him his friend. So the Bible says that we also shouldn't let outside negative impact on what's happening inside of us. Moral fashions come and go, and we should take care of what they advocate. But the Bible perspective is not to let outside influences confuse us. When people say you ought to do this or you ought to do that, don't let these differing, changing moral perspectives try and shake you up. You see, what the Bible teaches is let not the change come from the outside in, rather let the change go from the inside out. Friends influence us. That's why we hang out with them. We like the influence they have on us. And I believe, and I've found in my life, that God is the ultimate friend. He's not some obscure pie in the sky, gets off on burning candles and all the rest of it. He's my best friend. Truly is. His influence can deeply impact our mind and can cause a renewal of our mind. The Bible talks about that. It happened to me. I found a whole new way of thinking about myself. Look, I'm going to share this here. When I was a young child, I had polio, right? And I spent a lot of my childhood in built-up surgical boots and leg on. You imagine what that was like in the schoolyard. And a lot of the stuff, you're a failure. And I was impacted physically. I was always last into the race. And you know, when they're picking teams, you get the two popular captains. They have a pick each. I was always the last kid. Nobody wanted me on their team. And I grew up with that in my head. And I didn't realise the impact it had on it to me until Jesus set me free from that. So, depending on your circumstance, if you have the help of a really good qualified counsellor, and if you enter into a friendship with God, like what happened to me, then the potential is there for life-changing healing. It's real, it's powerful, and you can be set free from these experiences. So please don't give up. Hope's at hand. At Team Hope we say two things all the time. Always hope for the right thing, and don't hope alone. It is possible to make an adult re-evaluation to a childhood conclusion, and you can achieve that experience, and the potential of it is to have a profound impact on your life. Suddenly you can see past that event that happened way back when you were a child. And sometimes in counselling we have what we call a light bulb moment, like I did, really, at Waterfall Gully. The thing that had been scaring me all these years, it was gone. Now you might be asking me, how do I know it's possible to have this experience, that you can escape that type of hold on your life? Well, for me, the answer would be quite simple. There are definitely no crocodiles at Waterfall Gully. Have a think about these things. My name's Rob, and I'm from Team Hope.